Savannah wave. When I was a girl growing up, my grandfather used to take us every summer to Savannah, where he was originally from, and to visit all of our extended relatives. And the leave-taking took quite some time. You had to hug everybody and kind of say goodbye and all of that. And then all the relatives would gather in front of the house, and as you drove away, they'd all wave and wave, and the goal was to keep waving until you couldn't see each other anymore. So I remember many times looking out the back window of my grandparents' car, waving to see my Aunt Sue and my Uncle Howard and my cousins and everybody waving. The Savannah wave was an important part of the ritual of going to Savannah, the kind of looking back and having that time. Jesus, when he asked somebody to follow him, a man says, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home," which I think is a pretty reasonable request. You know, it's pretty inappropriate almost to not say goodbye. You wouldn't leave somebody's home without saying goodbye and thank you if they had you over for a visit. You certainly would, if you were leaving home, say, "Bye, I'll see you later." Saying goodbye is an important part of being in a culture, in a community, in a family. We say goodbye. But Jesus says, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." Even worse is the one who says, "Let me go bury my father." And Jesus says, "Let the dead bury the dead." I really don't understand what Jesus is trying to get at. And it actually is in the very first verse that we have in our passage today. And frankly, pretty much all of Luke's gospel hinges on this. Chapter 9, verse 51. When the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Everything that follows, that we will be hearing about over the next, 3 or 4 months, will be Jesus on his way to Jerusalem, setting his face toward Jerusalem. He's setting his face toward his passion and cross and death. He's setting his face toward the hard stuff. And people are like, let me get ready for the journey, not knowing really what's in store. But Jesus says, anyone who looks back when they're plowing, what happens? If you're plowing and you look backward, you get furrows that are all crooked, or you get furrows that aren't deep enough or aren't shallow enough or just the right depth. You look back. You do the wave. Jesus is saying, look forward. Now, as somebody who's a big history buff, I go, but if we don't look back, how do we know, the things we have learned to go forward? How do we make sure that history doesn't repeat itself? All the people around Jesus don't understand this moment that Luke captures in verse 51. He set his face to go to Jerusalem. Because Jesus has that same instinct, I'm sure, to want to go back and say goodbye to his mother or his family. To stop along the way and say, I'll just stop here for a while. But he has to keep moving forward. He has to keep going, setting his face toward Jerusalem. We have this section where he's going through Samaria, and the town where he's going won't accept him. Why? Because he set his face toward Jerusalem. Remember that Samaritans and the Israelites disagreed on where to worship God. And when he set his face toward Jerusalem, the Samaritans don't worship in Jerusalem, and so they say, we don't need you here. And then we have James and John. Oh my gosh. Shall we rain fire down? Ask God to rain fire down and consume them? No. They really are not setting their face toward Jerusalem. They're stuck where they are. That whole thing about the wave Savannah wave, is something that we do in our hearts. I don't know about you, but I'm certain that at some point in your life, you have been going through a bookshelf looking for something and came across a yearbook, and 2 hours later find yourself going, where did 2 hours go? We look back. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, unless it becomes an escape from moving forward. Unless it becomes a way of holding ourselves back. Jesus sets his face toward Jerusalem. This is the actual translation. This is what he literally says in Greek. In Luke is he sets his face toward Jerusalem. He's not looking back. And I can only imagine that he wants to. Jesus is human. Jesus, we know, will be in the garden and say, not your will, but my will, but not my will, but your will. And if this cup could pass from me, let it pass. There has to be a part of Jesus that wants to look back. But he knows that Jerusalem is where he is called to go. The kingdom of God is a place that we need to go, Jesus is saying. But we get really comfortable with here. We get really comfortable with looking back. We get comfortable with thinking, oh, this is the way we've always done things. Or this is the way the church says everything has to be. Jesus sets his face forward. And when they want to go backward, he says, no, we must move. So over the next 3 months, as we are hearing the stories that are so central to our faith, it's really easy as a preacher to try to focus just on one Sunday at a time. But we're going to look at the prodigal son and the Good Samaritan and the other teachings of Jesus through this lens of going toward the kingdom of God, setting his face toward Jerusalem. Everything in Luke's gospel is about this journey. And we are going on it. We're not looking back, per se. I feel odd saying, okay, well, you must move forward and not look back, but look back on this sermon and remind me to set my face toward Jerusalem. I'm aware of a little bit of a irony in that. But it's really easy when we hear a lesson every week, separate from one another, to forget that they're all of a piece. Jesus is teaching them along the way. Jesus is leading them to the kingdom of God. He says, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Point actually becomes not so much looking back, but taking up that plow to begin with. They say, let me go and say goodbye to my family and friends. Let me pack a bag. And Jesus says, no.